Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited to be filming this video today and I'm so grateful that you are here to watch it. Today I want to talk about a topic that is super close to my heart, and that's spirituality. In this video, I'm going to share my journey in spirituality as well as talk a little bit about what spirituality means to me, and then I want to share some really awesome tips that I've learned along the way to help you cultivate your very own spiritual practice. So I actually grew up in a really liberal home when it came to spirituality. My parents had both grown up in really strict Catholic homes, and they had to go to Mass every Sunday, and they sort of had religion shoved down their throats. So they were pretty adamant that they didn't want that experience for their children. So they decided to actually let us decide what religion we wanted to practice and really what we wanted to believe. So from a really young age, we were introduced to all sorts of different ideologies and different spiritual practices. So we learned a bit about Buddhism, we learned the 10 Native American Indian commandments, we learned Aboriginal Dreamtime stories, and my mum actually taught my sister and I to meditate when I was 5 years old. So what I really loved, and looking back on this experience, I'm so grateful that I was given the opportunity to choose what religion I wanted to practice, because the practice that I have now and the beliefs that I have now have come from a place of being able to see what's out there and being able to find what really resonates with me. And it's been a beautiful practice, and I actually hold on to those beliefs a lot more strongly than I feel like I would if I had had them imposed on me from a young age. I've actually always been really fascinated by religion and spirituality, and I always remember having this connection to something greater than myself, or believing that there was a force out there that was bigger than all of us. I loved going to chapel at school. I loved walking into churches and seeing the big, beautiful stained glass windows. I was actually elected senior sacristan in year 11 at my school, which was pretty ironic considering at the time in my home life I was completely going off the rails. So I would be riding around in beat up old cars with boys twice my age smoking pot out of pencil sharpeners, and then on the weekends, and then come in and lead the Lord's Prayer in front of school assembly on the Monday morning. So the irony of that was definitely not lost on me, but I've always had this sort of connection to something greater than myself. I sort of lost that when I got to university. So I was doing a course called the Psychology of Religion, and while I found it incredibly fascinating and so intellectually stimulating, it actually caused me to really question everything that I knew. I decided during that time that religion was for people who were too afraid to face the fear of death. They couldn't accept that life was finite and that when it was over, it was just totally over. And so they created this man in the sky and this fictitious land that we went to called heaven, to make themselves feel better about the reality that we were actually facing. I also started looking back through history at all of the unspeakable atrocities that have been committed in the name of religion, all of the wars, all of the violent conflicts, and I found it really hard to reconcile this idea of this all-knowing, all-loving, all-powerful God, and the fact that there were, starving children in the world, the fact that there were crimes being committed. I really didn't understand that if God loved us so much, why was He leaving us to suffer? So as most of you know, if you've heard me talk about my story before, while I was at uni, I was in a really dark place. I was suffering with depression, I was battling addiction, I had days where I couldn't get out of bed, and eventually I got to a point where I just realized that if I kept going down this path, my life, if I survived at all, would mean so little. I would never unleash the infinite potential that I knew that I possessed. I would never make the impact that I was really born to make in the world, and my life really just wouldn't be worth living. So I got to a point where I just decided to turn everything around, and I started, from there I started practicing yoga, I started meditating again, I started reading every self-help book and blog and listening to every podcast that I could get my hands on, and things started to shift slowly one by one in my life. So it was actually not long after I started on this new path that I was out one night in Brisbane in a nightclub, and I remember at this point I was getting really sick of going out. I was really disillusioned by all of the hype around going out clubbing, getting dressed up and getting really excited, and then just being totally disappointed and let down. And I was just really over doing things that I regretted, like waking up next to people that I didn't know, getting so drunk that I couldn't remember what I'd done, waking up the next morning just with like a killer hangover and completely ruining all the plans that I had for the weekend. And so I remember I was getting to this point where I knew that I didn't really want to do this for more, and this life just wasn't really for me, but I was still sort of engaged in it. I still sort of had one foot in the door. And on this one particular night, I was out with one of my girlfriends, and we were sitting in a bar in Fortitude Valley, and this woman came up to me and she offered to buy me a glass of champagne. And my girlfriend that I was out with had gone off. She was with a guy, I'm pretty sure. And so I sat down with this woman and we just started talking, and somehow we got onto the topic of God. And she started telling me about this church that she went to, and we started talking, and we were talking about spirituality and our beliefs. I told her a bit about my story, and then she invited me along to come on the next Sunday, and she wrote down the address in my phone and was like, come 6 o'clock, I'm going to be there, I'll meet you there, can't wait to see you. And I was a little bit like, okay, this is really weird. I have no idea who you are. I could be like walking into the first scene of a horror movie right now. But something in me just like lit up when she was speaking, and something in me knew that like it just felt really right. And I remember I drove out there that Sunday. It was like a 6 p.m. service, and I drove out, and it was in the middle of nowhere. I knew no one. I had no idea where I was going, but as I was driving out there over the bridge, I just remember the sun was setting and the clouds were just the most beautiful, like pinky sort of yellow color, and I just remember this peace just coming over me. And for those of you that have lived with anxiety, depression, if you struggle with addiction, you know that there's not a lot of peace. Like it's actually really, really sad, but there's not a lot of peace in your life. Everything feels really chaotic. You're either sort of moving, you're living completely like in the in the future, worrying and stressing about what's going to happen, or you're completely like stuck in the past, obsessing over things that have happened and things that are weighing you down. And in this moment, I just felt this beautiful peace come over my heart, and I was just like, I don't know what this is. I don't know why this is happening, but oh my gosh, give me more of it. So I walked in that night, and it was like a room full of 1,000 complete strangers. I didn't know anyone, but it felt like coming home. And that's when I knew that this was something really special, and this was something that, I was finally getting back on the right path. And that night, I think the message that the pastor talked about was about grace. And it was this concept and this idea that no matter what you'd done, God still loved you. And this was this is a freaking revelation for me, because I had convinced myself, I was so convinced that, if there really was a God, he was going to be pretty freaking pissed off with me. Like the way that I was living my life, the way that I treated people, and just the person that I was really wasn't in alignment with any sort of values, like spiritual values or principles that I'd certainly learned. And I had this fear that if I ever came back to religion or to spirituality or to God, basically, that I would have to pay for what I'd done. I would have to face retribution for these sins that I'd committed. And hearing this message that night that like I wasn't going to be punished, like God didn't want to punish me, that he wasn't angry with me. He actually just really loved me, and he just wanted me to come home. And knowing that in that moment I could just make this decision, and then it was all gone. Like I could wipe the slate clean, and I could just say yes to this incredible like peace and this incredible forgiveness, and it would just come over my life. That was just like, it was a complete game changer for me, and I just knew that it felt really, really good. So that night I made a commitment to myself. I think more than anything, I really didn't know what it meant at the time, but I just felt in my heart that I knew that I needed to make it. And for me, it was just a symbol, and it was really signified my decision to sort of come home to myself and to stop doing things that were clearly not serving me, to stop engaging in all of these really destructive behaviors, and to actually just get my life back on track and to start living up to the potential that I knew existed within me. So from there, I started going to church every Sunday. I was surrounded by these girls who really just spoke life over me. And what I mean by that is that they encouraged me. They saw something in me, like a lightness and a beauty that I really couldn't see in myself at the time. And they spoke to that, and they really brought out this side of me that I think I'd really lost. And it was so refreshing to have these close female relationships where there was no bitchiness, there was no gossip. It was literally just supporting and encouraging and cheering each other on, and also getting really vulnerable about what we were going through. So rather than just pretending that everything was fine, rather than just, swishing things under the rug, we actually sat down with each other and got really raw and vulnerable about what was going on in our lives, like what we'd been through, how we were feeling, and we created space for one another to just be who we really are. And that was just such a breath of fresh air for me to come into the relationship with these girls who really just wanted what was best for me, and I just wanted what was best for them. And that period of my life, it was just this period of exponential spiritual growth that I really don't think that I could have experienced personally any other way or in any other arena. It was really so perfect for it was exactly what I needed at the time. During this time, I actually backslid a hell of a lot. Now, I was going to church every Sunday. I was surrounded by all these awesome girls, but at the same time, I was still so attached to this identity and this idea of myself as the party girl, as the girl who went out every weekend, as the girl who lost embarrassingly quickly at Never Have I Ever, as the girl who had all these awesome stories to tell of her escapades. And I was holding on to this idea of myself because I didn't know who I was without it. If I wasn't going out every weekend, if I wasn't writing myself off, if I wasn't getting with all these different guys, who was I? What would I do on a Saturday night? Who would I hang out with? And it was really hard for me to let go of all these different things that I used to define who I was. Eventually, I just got to this point where I realized that I didn't need any of that stuff to define me or to validate my worth. I realized that the only validation and recognition and acceptance and approval that I needed didn't come from anything or anyone out there. It actually came from within myself, and it came from the God within me. And that was a complete game changer for me, because I was no longer seeking outside myself for what had been within me all along. And it was the beginning of what came to be, or has come to be, this really beautiful relationship with God and with the God within me. So these days, my spiritual practice looks like a lot of meditation. So I meditate for 10 minutes every morning, then sometimes at night. It looks like journaling, it looks like prayer, it looks like angel cards. I still go to church most Sundays, and I still love the principles that are taught through Christianity. But for me, religion is just one of the many pathways to connect with the divine. I think that at their core, all of the world's religions, whether you're looking at Christianity or Islam or Buddhism or Hinduism even, they all teach the same essential lessons and values, and they all have these core truths buried within them, and these core tenets that are just articulated in different ways. So, for example, they all teach us about loving our neighbor as ourselves. They all teach us about treating others the way that we would like to be treated. They teach us that there is something out there that is greater than ourselves that we can turn to for a source of guidance and unconditional love and support. They teach us that, we're not these physical bodies, that we're actually souls having a human experience rather than the other way around, and that there is an incredible source or state of being, or for me it's a plane of existence that we've come from and that we'll return to when we leave these physical bodies. And when I realized that, and when I started studying all of these different religions and pulling out these core universal truths that I found at the center of them, it became so simple for me to adopt this practice that really worked for me and that really resonated with me. And at the core of it, and at the core of, I believe, any great, really spiritual connection, is this desire to just know God, and this desire to connect with God, and this desire to feel this incredible inherent oneness and connection with all that is. Because Also at the core of all these religions is this idea that we are all connected, that we are all one, that we are all just different manifestations of the same consciousness. And when you really connect to that and when you tap into that, you tap into an incredible wellspring of infinite energy and potential, and you stop living from this place of fear and lack and scarcity, and all of a sudden you're living from this place of infinite joy and peace and abundance. And that's when life starts to become not this like ordeal to be endured, but this incredible adventure to be created. And that's the life that I've been living for these past few years, and it's been freaking incredible. So for me now, spirituality means knowing that there is a force greater than ourselves that is this source of incredible unconditional love and peace and security and guidance and wisdom that is available to us 24/7. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to be anyone special. We can access it whenever and however we want to. I'm a massive believer in the power of prayer, in like shifting things energetically within us, of getting people around us who just have the highest intentions for us to help us, whether it's like sever spiritual bonds or to shift energetic, whether you want to call them limiting beliefs or like shackles that are holding us down, whatever it is that you need. I really, whether it's like healing, like things within us, whether it's like mental, physical, emotional things, or breaking like ties that we've had to different identities or people or experiences. I am a massive believer in the power of prayer, being able to shift those things energetically within us. I also think that spirituality just means that knowing that you're here for a reason, and knowing that you have been placed in this time in history with a purpose, in the body that you're in right now, in the family that you have grown up in the exact circumstances that you, given the exact circumstances that you needed to become who it is that you're meant to be, and that there is a reason for your existence that is greater and far more powerful than you could absolutely ever imagine. It also means understanding that there is a greater purpose for everything that we're going through, so that the trials we face, the obstacles that we come up against aren't just designed to knock us down or to make us feel inferior. They're actually lessons that have been put in our path to help us grow, and challenges that we face to help us become the best version of ourselves and help us develop within us the qualities that we need to enact our divine purpose on this planet. So it's looking at life as not something that's happening to us, but something that's actually happening for us. It's also understanding that life works vertically before it works horizontally. So when your connection with the divine is intact and overflowing with this joy and love and peace and strength, then everything else on this physical plane that we're inhabiting right now just falls into place. So it's getting this relationship with God, with your source, with whatever you want to call like the universe, whatever your higher power is that you choose to identify with. It's acknowledging that that relationship comes first, and then everything else on this physical plane just falls into place. Your relationships with your family, your friends, your career, all these physical things that we come to define ourselves by. What I love about what's happening on the planet right now is there's this beautiful shift in this evolution of consciousness where people are becoming so much more aware of the similarities between all of the world's religions and spiritual ideologies rather than their differences, and they're opening up to new ways of thinking and creating these beautiful relationships with each other and with this source energy that looks different for everyone but can be accepted in every different sphere of society. And that's what I think that our generation is really here to do and here to bring, is this new idea of what it means to be spiritual and what it means to be connected to God. So if you want to start to cultivate this incredible spiritual connection, I would really just encourage you to just get really still, like get in meditation, sit down with your journal and just ask questions and see what comes up. Go for walks in nature and just start doing things that make you feel really alive, like those things that really light you up. What will start to happen, like start having conversations and really just like open up the lines of communication between you and the divine. And it doesn't have to look like anything special. It doesn't have to be this really ritualized experience. I talk to God in the shower. Like it really is just whatever feels good for you, and it's really just about starting that conversation and then watching the miracles that unfold. I remember when I first started on this journey, I felt so silly, like talking to myself basically. But what started happening is that, these messages and these signs started coming from like the metaphysical world into the physical world that we're living in now. You know, I'd run into people that I'd been thinking about, you know, the night before. I'd get a phone call from someone that I'd been having a conversation about with another friend. All of these beautiful synchronicities started to happen in my life, and to me that was like this beautiful affirmation that you know, the divine was hearing what I was saying. I started getting a couple of years ago, I started getting these really intense downloads from the universe or from God, and to the point where I literally, like, it's not me writing anymore, it's literally just like source energy flowing through me and onto the page. And I could not be more grateful for those experiences, because they really are, like, they are my proof of the divine. Not that I even need it anymore, but they are like my connection and my beautiful affirmation that we're not doing this alone. And to me, that's what spirituality really means. It's realizing that we don't have to do this life alone. Like, this life can be crazy and wild and scary, really scary at times, but we don't have to do it by ourselves. You know, we're hardwired for connection, and before connection with anyone else, it's that connection with God, and it's the connection to our higher selves. So whatever that looks like for you, experiment, set the intention that you'd like to become more connected to God or the universe, whatever word feels really good for you, and then just watch and wait for these incredible miracles to start unfolding in your life, which I know that they will. If you want to learn more about this topic, it's one of the topics that we're going to cover in my e-course coming up called Sex, Self-Love and Spirituality. And it's a 6-week course. It's going to involve a Facebook group, weekly live videos, and one-on-one sessions with me as well. And I'm so excited to launch it again this year. So stay tuned for details of that. And if you love this video, I would love if you just subscribe to my channel and sign up to my email newsletter, which I'll put all the links for that below. But thank you so much for being here, for watching this video, and just for being here on the planet right now. Like, your presence is really so truly valued, and I for one am so grateful you're here. So thank you so much, and I'll see you soon. And don't forget, if this video really resonated with you, please share it around. Like, share it with your girlfriends and guy friends and your parents and your kids, and you never know whose life you could totally transform by sharing this around. So thank you so much again for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye guys.